All right, I'm gonna do some streamer fishing, and the one thing I do differently besides the actual technique for streamer fishing is I fish from upstream walking downstream. When I'm nymphing, I usually go downstream upstream. Aw, look at the geese, the little babies. That's cute. So for instance, in this hole, if I were to fish this hole, I would approach it from downstream and fish it casting upstream to drift down. But because I'm streamer fishing, I'm gonna stand above it, cast across, strip it on through as it swings on by. My setup for streamer fishing is I'm using a 5-weight Sage X. I have a Ross reel, which is a 5X. It's an Evolution. I have 5-weight fly line, and I have a Versa leader. And a Versa leader is just a weighted leader. It's 7 feet long, and it's 6 IPS, and that stands for 6 inches per second. So this sinks 6 inches per second. And then below that, attached to it, just with loop to loop, I have about 2.5 feet of fluorocarbon tippet, and then I have my olive blossom, and then below that I have about 1.5 feet of tippet and a small woolly bugger. So for starters, I'm going to cast directly across from me, and I'll strip it on through here, and then just keep casting all the way down. I'll fan it all the way through, and then I'll cast down and strip it on up, and then I might work my way back up. Give that a couple seconds to sink, and then I'll just strip it on through. And my technique is, as I'm pulling my line in, I'm moving my rod tip sporadically. Let it dead drift a little bit as it's sinking, and then just kind of strip it in. And I'll change this up. You know, a couple times I might strip it in very slow. Let that sink, and I'll just strip it in slow as it's coming across there. Nice and slow. And then other times I'll do a 1, 2, 3 pause technique, and that is a nice little technique. 1, 2, 3 pause, 1, 2, 3 pause, 1, 2, 3 pause, 1, 2, 3 pause, 1, 2, 3 pause. That pause is pretty powerful. It acts as if it's a, you know, a fish or a crayfish that's drifting down, trying to go upstream, and then drifts down, runs out of energy, kind of deal. And I'll just switch this technique up between those three. Sometimes I'll just let it dead drift. So here, I'm gonna let this dead drift all the way through, cast it way over there, and I'm just gonna let this swing. So I'm keeping my rod tip still, and as these flies sink, they're sinking and dead drifting all through there. I'll let my fly line stretch out completely, and then I'll strip it on back in. And after I work that portion, then I'll go a little further down, let that sink down into that hole. Once my fly line is stretched out and I have contact with my flies, I'll start stripping it in. Oh, whew, got bit down there. All right, so we'll do that again. Let that kind of sink on through. Let that dead drift on, get stretched out, and then just strip it in. I'll strip it in a little slower this time. Bringing my fly line in, moving my rod tip. Fly line in, move my rod tip. Mend my line so that gives it some more time to sink down before it stretches out, because as soon as it stretches out, the tendency is for those flies to rise through the water column. That Versa leader really helps sink it down. Go even further in there, let that kind of just dead drift back in, and I had yet to strip it up this seam here. So I'll let this kind of sink and then I'll strip it up. And keep trying. It's all about presentation. It's all about how that fly crosses past in front of those trout, whether or not it pisses them off or they legit want to hit it. I'm gonna let that sink way down in there. Let some line out. So I cast it up here, let a lot of line out so it sinks down. I'm just doing quick little jolts here, bringing my fly line in and pulling my rod tip up, so it causes those flies to come screaming up and then push back down. Maybe I just need to reposition myself, right? Maybe it's just the way that fly is kind of approaching and coming up. I just need to change it, because down in here looks very deep. This looks so fishy to me. Let that sink down in there and strip it on through. Just trying different techniques. I'll cast way down into this hole. Let that sink way down in there. And then do my 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, pause. Kind of strip it on through as it swings on through this hole down here. And another technique is just to leave it still. Let it stretch out and just let it kind of float through that water column. If all other presentations fail, maybe occasionally popping it, and you can come in, kind of mend it, right? So if I mend my line all the way over here, my fly line is going to want to stretch out and head over that way with my flies. And then I could do the same thing. I can mend all the way over here, and my fly line's going to come swinging on through and stretch over there. I can kind of twist it on through. Sometimes it could potentially be just straight up that it's the weight is not getting your fly down enough. Kind of let some line out. It gives it some time to sink down and get into position. I'm just letting this kind of stretch all the way out. Just popping as it swims on through there. And you know, sometimes if that doesn't work, I am not against throwing a split shot on there to help it sink. And I'll throw a healthy one on, right? Take a large split shot and I'll put it above my first fly. About an inch above it. And then that should help my fly sink. Just recast that out in there. Let that sink down in. See if that helps at all. Gets it down a little bit deeper. Oh, that's exactly what needed to happen. I needed it down further. Just was probably skimming right over top of their heads. There we go. Gorgeous brown trout. Looks a little tigerish actually. That might be a tiger. I'm just getting my third rod here situated so I can strap my rod in and hold it. Wow, how about that? Actually, it's come a little bit over here where it's shallow. That's gorgeous. Alright, let's release this. Let's do a little underwater release here. Really pretty trout.